Dorian bringing torrential rain and hurricane-force winds, hitting island after island and surprising Puerto Rico with a sudden turn. Island-wide, more than 50 shelters are open after officials closed all schools and ordered public workers to stay home. With Dorian expected to grow stronger, concern now stretching beyond the Caribbean to the Florida coast.
Residents in Florida are bracing for Hurricane Dorian, which is posing an increasing danger for the Labor Day weekend. Let's go live now to Miami and bring in Democratic Congresswoman Debbie Mucarsel-Powell of Florida. She's a member of the House Judiciary Committee. We've got Mike Barnicle, Katty Kay, Reverend Al Sharpton, Nick Confessori, and Adrian Elrod all back with us as well. Congresswoman, what's the latest update? What's it looking like?
Good morning, everyone. I just got off the phone, actually, with the director of the Emergency Operations Center in Monroe County. I represent Monroe County, the Florida Keys, and also parts of Miami-Dade County. So we are definitely ground zero for sometimes for the eye of these storms that come through the east coast of Florida. But at this moment, we don't have the information as to where it's going to hit. So we are preparing. This is not a first run for us. Unfortunately, we continue to brace for these hurricanes every single summer. The storms are getting stronger. But what I can tell you is that I have full confidence in our emergency management team in Monroe and in Miami-Dade County. I applaud Governor DeSantis for declaring a state of emergency here in the state, because it's going to allow us to start moving some of the resources, not just state, but also federal, that we will need. Unfortunately, it's too early to tell. So we don't have enough information as to where exactly the storm is going to hit, but we ask all residents to have a plan in place. There's still some time, and we just need to watch closely.
I was going to ask you about any interaction you've had with the governor's office. Obviously, Governor DeSantis, it's going to be his first major hurricane to hit the state of Florida. He surprised a lot of people over the past year with his leadership. I'm curious, have you had any interactions with the governor's office? What are they doing right now to prepare for this storm?
I actually reached out yesterday, and I have not spoken to him directly. I'm waiting to get a time for us to connect directly. I want to be available to him and the emergency management team. But it seems like the person that he's appointed to oversee the emergency management operation here in Florida is very highly competent. And so I feel optimistic that we are going to be ready and that we will follow the right procedures so that we don't see any loss of life or any casualties relating to this storm.
Congresswoman, with regard to emergency management, there's been speculation that the president may or may not take as much as $200 million marked for FEMA for emergency management and move that money to the border for border crossings. Have you heard anything about that as of lately? Can you bring us up to date on what you've heard, if anything? And secondly, appropriations bills, all money bills begin in the House of Representatives, where you have been elected to. So it would appear that he may have to do this by executive order if indeed he does it. But anyway, can you bring us up to speed on what you know?
Look, the news, when I found out that this president wants to take much needed FEMA funds, let me remind everyone, we are still recovering from Hurricane Irma. We have still not received all the reimbursements from FEMA that we expect. And so what I did yesterday, I don't have many more details than that, is I sent a letter to the director of FEMA asking him specific questions, whether he has already sent these funds to the president, whether he has been asked to allocate funds prior to the news that we received yesterday, and whether they're prepared. We are bracing for this storm right now, and we need FEMA to be with us here on the ground, ready and with the appropriate funding if that storm were to hit the coast and cause severe damage. So at this moment, I'm waiting to hear back. We sent this letter yesterday, but I will keep you posted on that.
Congresswoman, I'd like to ask you about another issue. You're on the Judiciary Committee, and when you went back for the summer break, you said in an interview that you were still looking at the options when it came to impeachment, that you wanted to take the inquiry seriously. It sounded like you weren't in favor of impeachment proceedings being launched against the president. Now that you've been back home with your constituents for much of the summer, is that still your position, or do you what's your view today on impeachment proceedings?
I think that the most important thing that we need to do is allow for the American public to get all the information. Most of Americans have not read the Mueller report. They don't understand the allegations against this president as they pertain to obstruction of justice. We just heard this president now violate the Emoluments Clause by suggesting that he is going to be hosting the G7 summit at his resort here in Miami. So I think that I still feel strongly that we have to play our strongest hand in the courts, and which is why we are requesting all the evidence, which is also why we need to have Don McGahn, Special White House Counsel Don McGahn, who is one of the most important witnesses to tell the story to the American public. More people have asked me when we are going to start impeachment proceedings, and what I tell everyone is justice has its own timeline. We need to follow the right steps and get that information first and give it to the American public so that they know what is happening with this administration.
Congresswoman, it's Nick Confessori. I want to ask you, so you and your colleagues are going to meet on September 4th to discuss a gun safety bill in the House. And I wonder, in the wake of yet another mass shooting in our country, if you think there is any opening for a change, for something different to happen on this gun bill that would be different from what has happened on every other gun bill that has tried to get through the House in the last 10 years.
I refuse to stand by idly and do nothing because we have Mitch McConnell and the Republicans in Washington, D.C. who are hiding their heads in the sand. It is the will of the American people, and we must follow the will. Not denying the American people from a vote for a universal background check bill that we sent back in February is really completely disregarding the will of 90% of Americans. This is such a personal issue for me. I lost my father to gun violence, and I ran, and I am in this seat, and I am now in the Judiciary Committee because I will not stop until we have action. We cannot sit by and wait for another mass shooting. So I am very proud that the chairman of the committee, Chairman Nadler, called us back in session before our work week starts back in September 9th. And so we will be marking up 3 more gun reform bills. But I have to tell you, it is not only Mitch McConnell. We need the courage and the will from Republican senators who are in the majority right now to tell the Senate Majority Leader to bring these votes to the floor. And so I hope and I expect that showing everyone that we are coming back, we are doing our part, we are working, and they have to stand with us asking and putting pressure on the Senate so that we can have these bills come to a floor. I'm optimistic. I'm not going to give up right now.
Congresswoman Reverend Al Sharpton, in the light of coming back early, the Judiciary Committee, to deal with some of these issues like background check, would you hope to see an aggressive move by Democrats, even on the presidential campaign with the debate coming up in Houston, around pushing this issue? You're a congresswoman in a state where we had the Parkland shootings. It was almost 4 weeks ago. We had El Paso and Dayton in one weekend. Yet we've seen not even background checks come before this Congress and Senate and pass something as supportive as you've just outlined by the overwhelming majority of the American public. At what point does the Judiciary Committee members and others say it's time to go more aggressive, go to the mat, and get something to deal with these mass killings?
Well, that's exactly what we're doing, which is why we're going back early next week. Here's the problem, and I don't understand why we continue to politicize the safety of our communities. Not only has this happened to me, I know many members in Congress that have been touched by gun violence. I have met with hundreds of parents that have lost their children to senseless shootings. And I represent an area in my district that has a very high rate of gun violence among kids under the age of 18. So what I don't want is for the conversation to go away after a week of a mass shooting like the one that we saw in El Paso, like the one that we saw in Dayton. We have to continue to bring light to this issue on every single day. It's something that I talk about daily, and it is something that I intend to work on. And I can tell you, like my colleague Lucy McBath, who has been a champion, she lost her son to gun violence here in the state of Florida. It's going to take all of us, and it's going to take the will of the people marching, screaming out loud, calling your senators. And you see passion in my voice because we can't forget that this happened just a couple of weeks ago. I don't want another mass shooting to wake up to another mass shooting and for us to, again, send thoughts and prayers. We need action.
Congresswoman Adrienne Elrod here. I was on Hillary Clinton's campaign in 2016, and we really tried to make gun safety issues, reforming gun safety legislation, a top priority. But even with suburban swing voters, it didn't seem to manifest itself to actually getting them to vote in our favor in 2016. We saw a little bit of a difference in the 2018 midterms, I think in large part because of Parkland and in large part because of other mass shootings that have taken place. Do you think this is something that will actually swing suburban swing voters in the direction of Democrats and against Trump in 2020? Do you think in other words, if Mitch McConnell, Donald Trump don't do anything to pass and be leaders on gun safety reforms, do you think this may actually sink their chances of re-election in 2020?
I have no doubt. I have been in my district, all over my district, and this issue comes up every single time. Parents are scared to send their kids to school. People are scared to go to public places. I myself, when I send my kids every morning to school, it's in the back of my mind. Moms Demand, Students Demand Action, those groups are very active in my community, in the state of Florida, and all over the country. And they worked very hard to get some of us elected and send us to the House of Representatives. I have no doubt that this is going to be a key issue in the 2020 election.
So, Congresswoman, let's end how we began and talk about this threat to your constituents and people across the state of Florida. We saw during Hurricane Katrina, local officials move too slowly. We then saw the federal government move too slowly, and a real crisis came about. What's your best advice to your constituents and people throughout South and Central Florida that are watching this hurricane approach? Could be a Cat 3, which is, of course, deadly. What's your best advice on when they should make their decision on whether they need to get in their cars and head up I-95 or leave some other way?
I think the most important thing here to keep in mind is that you have to follow the orders from your local municipality. So a lot of these orders go from municipality to municipality, depending on where the storm is going to hit. You still have time. Florida, we still have time. We have a few days to get our evacuation plan in place, to get the 7 days worth of medicine and food and water, put gas in your cars. Let's be prepared. But the most important thing is that we have to follow the evacuation orders or the warnings that we get from the local emergency management operations center, depending on where you live. I know that it's an inconvenience for many Floridians to have to evacuate. We will have shelters that will be ready and open, but I'd rather have people go through the inconvenience of having to leave their home than see casualties after the storm. So it's our officials are prepared. We are ready to handle the storm. It is up to the residents to follow the evacuation orders and to have a plan in place.
All right, Congresswoman Debbie Mucarsel-Powell, thank you so much for being with us. We really appreciate it. And
thank you for having
me. Next, all right, presidential candidate and Congressman Tim Ryan is here, and he's going to talk about his campaign's next step after learning he's not going to be in the September debate. We'll talk to him about that and much more when Morning Joe returns. Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.